Ever wonder what happens when a daring alien princess and a humble coding genius join forces to battle a cosmic tyrant and nearly bring down a gravitational superweapon in the heart of a crowded city? It's the most thrilling sequence of events you'll hear this month. In this story, we follow Zavra, a runaway royal heir fleeing an unwanted marriage, and Julius, who unwittingly becomes her ally, and maybe something more. Their battle against impossible odds unfolds with gravity-ripping tech, secret alien factions, and last-second acts of heroism that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Want to know how they shut down that massive disruptor before it leveled entire city blocks? Or whether the monarchy on Zavra's homeworld accepts her bold stand? Make sure to listen to the entire story to find out. If you enjoy heart-pounding sci-fi adventures mixed with romance and humor, please subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share even more out-of-this-world stories. Julius Morgan stared at the half-empty coffee mug on his cluttered desk, then rubbed his tired eyes as a wall of code scrolled by on the screen. Another bug, another Friday evening lost in the endless tangle of software loops. He glanced at the calendar on his phone. It was his 30th birthday. Not that it felt like much of a celebration. He was hunched over a debugging session at 7 p.m., his apartment lights the only glow amid the dim corridor outside. The place was a testament to his passions, meticulously organized chaos that combined software manuals, coding challenge trophies, and limited edition sci-fi memorabilia. A framed poster of an old Star Wars film hung next to certificates from his university and a series of battered vintage space movie props. Julius's dark hair stood in perpetual disarray, a silent testament to the nights he spent wrestling with JavaScript errors and data anomalies. His phone lit up with another message, the fifth in as many minutes. A sense of impending social obligation filled the air. He recognized the name on the screen instantly. Finn. "Dude, we're heading your way. No backing out. You're 30 now. No more hermit life," it read, complete with celebratory emojis. Great, Julius thought, running a hand through his hair. He felt that low-level buzz of anxiety whenever social plans were forced on him. Still, Finn, Elias, and Alina were his closest friends. He couldn't exactly bar them from his door, and he did miss them. Well, maybe just a little. He'd barely had time to mute his phone before someone pounded on his apartment door. It figured, the old building had notoriously thin walls, so his attempts to hide in silence were probably doomed from the start. "We know you're in there, Jules," Finn's voice called, loud enough to wake the neighbors. "Your little game of hide-and-seek is over." Julius had half a mind to remain quiet, but one glance at the overhead light told him that his self-imposed darkness was impossible to fake. With a resigned sigh, he got up from his desk chair, nearly tripping over a tangle of USB cables on the floor. Opening the door, he found Finn, Elias, and Alina grinning at him like they'd just won a lottery they hadn't entered. Finn, ex-college linebacker and the human embodiment of unrelenting enthusiasm, slapped Julius on the shoulder. Elias, dressed in what Julius called tech mogul chic, a fitted hoodie, expensive jeans, and shoes that probably cost a month's rent, nodded hello, never taking his hand off the tablet pressed to his chest. Meanwhile, Alina, the de facto sensible one of the group, balanced a cake with 30 unlit candles precariously on one hand. "Happy birthday, you anti-social coding genius," Finn declared, enveloping Julius in a crushing hug that nearly knocked the wind out of him. Alina gently set the cake down on the small table near the door, careful not to upend the precarious arrangement of cables and circuit boards. Elias quickly peered around, eyes wide with fascination at the mismatched collection of technology scattered across the living room. "Just give me, 30 seconds to tidy," Julius said with no real conviction, sweeping an arm at the textbooks, stray soda cans, and half-eaten sandwich from who knows when. "Tidy? It's your birthday, not spring cleaning," Alina teased, "and you're not spending it alone." Elias gave a conspiratorial grin and tapped his tablet. "We've got a surprise for you," he announced. "Something way better than last year's fiasco." Julius felt a jolt of panic. Last year's big surprise had been a disastrous blind date set up by Finn and Elias, ending in a block number and mutual embarrassment. "Please tell me you didn't set me up with some poor, unsuspecting soul again," Julius pleaded. But Finn and Alina exchanged knowing smiles. Whatever they had planned, Julius could tell it was going to be bigger, possibly weirder, than any prior scheme. Before Julius could wrangle more details from them, Elias had commandeered the living room. He plugged his tablet into Julius's TV, the screen flickering to life with a browser tab open to what looked like an extremely stylized advertisement. Elegant calligraphy in an alien-looking script scrolled along the display with swirling galaxies in the background. "We found this service," Elias said with a triumphant flourish. "It's a companion service, or so the website claims." Alina tried and failed to look innocent. Julius felt his stomach drop. "Companion service?" he repeated, pinching the bridge of his nose. "For the love of all that's holy, don't tell me it's some random escort thing you found on the dark web." Finn let out a hearty laugh. "Not random, exotic. And we paid a premium in cryptocurrency for the absolute best match for you. She's perfect. Loves science fiction, advanced technology, all that nerdy stuff you fill your apartment with." Julius groaned, rubbing his temples. The mental image of another disastrous date loomed large. "We do not need a repeat of last year," he insisted. "I can't handle another meltdown." Alina offered him a sympathetic smile. "Trust me, Julius, this is different. The site had reviews, references. People said the experiences were out of this world." "They're probably just marketing it as sci-fi themed," Julius muttered, eyeing the swirling galaxy on the TV screen. He doubted any real authenticity. Certainly no genuine aliens were about to step into his life. "I still can't believe you guys use Bitcoin to pay for—" His complaint was abruptly cut off by the doorbell ringing a second time. "That might be her," Elias announced, waggling his eyebrows. Julius attempted to sprint toward the door, perhaps to lock it, but Finn's formidable linebacker reflexes got him there first. Julius was left to watch as Finn flung the door wide open, revealing a tall figure wrapped in a flowing silver dress that shimmered like living mercury. For a second, Julius thought there was some sort of advanced hologram standing on his threshold. The woman's skin glowed a soft, radiant jade green beneath his apartment's harsh fluorescent lights. Intricate braids of midnight black hair fell around her shoulders, each braid interwoven with filaments that sparkled like tiny stars. But it was her eyes that made Julius's heart stutter. They were entirely silver, no pupil or iris, just reflective pools that somehow peered straight through him. "Greetings," she said, her voice carrying a lilting accent that sounded both formal and otherworldly. "I have been informed that you are Julius Morgan, and that this is the date of your Earth-birth celebration. I am Zavra, though I understand Earth naming conventions might shorten it." She paused, inclining her head with an odd mix of regal courtesy and a hint of warmth. Finn glanced back at Julius, mouth slightly ajar, and Elias looked like he was about to drop his precious tablet. Alina, determined to maintain composure, stepped forward. "We're, just about to light the candles on Julius's cake," she managed politely. "Come on in, Zavra." Zavra moved with an unnerving grace, her footsteps making barely any sound. She seemed to almost float across the threshold. Julius, rooted to the spot, replayed the last few seconds in his mind, half certain that he was experiencing some elaborate practical joke. But as the door shut behind her, he registered every detail: the shimmer of her dress, the soft luminescence of her skin, and realized this was no ordinary costume. Alina set the cake on the small coffee table and lit the candles, hands shaking slightly under the alien's curious gaze. Julius wished he could vanish into the floor. Instead, he felt compelled to speak. "So, Zavra, right? You, you really do look like you're not from around here." Zavra inclined her head again, causing the metallic threads in her hair to catch the light. "I am not," she replied simply, as if remarking on the weather. "I come from a star system many light years from your own. My people call it Vashari Prime." Finn, Elias, and Alina wore identical expressions of astonishment, but Julius couldn't stop himself from blurting out the first thought in his head. "Wait, this is for real? You are actually an alien?" "You might use that term, yes," Zavra said, surveying Julius's cramped living room. "I am rather amused by your Earth entertainment, especially your films about interplanetary travel. Although I must say your portrayals of alien civilizations are aesthetically limited." Holy cow," Elias finally managed. This is the best money we've ever spent." He sounded more enthusiastic than alarmed, as if the revelation that she might be a genuine extraterrestrial was a dream come true for a sci-fi addict. Julius felt his mind tumble through a series of logical leaps. If she really was an alien, some advanced being, how on earth did she wind up on a companion service website? Alina cleared her throat, trying to restore some veneer of calm. "W- well, we're about to sing Happy Birthday to Julius. Care to join us?" She gestured at the cake with its 30 flickering candles. Zavra observed the glowing lights as though they were a significant phenomenon, then broke into a curious smile. "Ah, the flame ritual. I have encountered references to such customs in my pre-landing research. Something about making a wish?" Julius nodded dumbly, too stunned to do anything more. The group began to sing, off-key and stumbling, with the alien woman standing at the edge of the coffee table, silver eyes riveted to the candle flames. As the final note of the birthday chorus died away, Alina gently prompted, "Make a wish and blow them out." Zavra touched Julius's arm lightly before he could move. The contact sent a pleasant, almost electric buzz through him, like a low current, but not painful. "You must choose your wish carefully," she cautioned in that regal tone. "In some cultures, an ill-considered wish brings misfortune." Julius coughed, suddenly aware of the way her hand lingered. "Right," he said softly. I guess I wish for something new, something better than sitting behind a desk all day." He paused, cheeks warming. "I guess I just want an adventure." He exhaled sharply, snuffing out the 30 small flames in one go. Smoke curled into the air, and for a moment, the hush in the room felt charged with energy. Zavra nodded as if to confirm the ritual's importance. Then her expression shifted, her serene face tightening at the corners. "I sense we might all be in for more than we bargained for," she murmured. The sentiment gave Julius a cold tingle of fear. Finn broke the taut silence with a boisterous laugh. "Well, let's cut that cake and celebrate properly. Zavra, want a slice?" But before anyone could move, the sharp buzz of the door's electronic lock sounded again, an angry beep that indicated forced tampering. Everyone stiffened. Elias and Alina exchanged nervous glances. "Expecting another guest?" Julius asked, only half joking. No sooner had he spoken than a scarlet beam of light cut through the living room window, accompanied by a deafening crash of shattered glass. The beam carved a smoldering line into the wall, missing Zavra's head by mere inches. Finn yelped and dove behind the couch. Elias tugged Alina down under the dining table, and Julius instinctively covered his head, ears ringing with confusion. Zavra acted with a speed and precision that stole Julius's breath. In a blur of motion, she tackled him to the floor, shielding his body with hers as more crimson bursts of energy seared the air. The stench of scorched upholstery joined the chaos, and the lights overhead flickered ominously. "It appears I have been tracked much faster than I anticipated," Zavra hissed, her voice low and urgent. "Your local authorities do not possess plasma shielding technology, do they?" "Local authorities?" Julius echoed, his heart pounding. "Try again. I barely have decent Wi-Fi." Another volley of energy crackled through the broken window, sizzling into the coffee table and sending the cake flying. Finn peeked over the back of the couch, eyes wide as saucers. "What the hell, Jules? Your date really brought the fireworks." Elias and Alina were huddled beneath the table, the battered remains of Julius's laptop raining sparks as it took a glancing hit. "We need a plan," Elias shouted, eyes darting between the intruders outside and the improbable alien in their midst. Zavra's brow furrowed, her silver eyes scanning the surrounding carnage. "My pursuers are likely the Imperial Wardens from Vashari Prime. They want me alive, so they've set their weapons to stun. But they have never been praised for marksmanship." Julius struggled not to panic. "Why are they after you in the first place?" he demanded, a new sense of betrayal edging his voice. Zavra looked momentarily pained. "I may have neglected to share my complete identity. I am not merely Zavra from Vashari Prime. I am the only heir of the ruling monarchy, set to be forcibly wed to a tyrant from a hostile star empire. I fled to Earth to escape the arrangement. Finn, still crouched behind the sofa, sputtered incredulously. So you're a runaway princess? Like, literally? Another shot rang out, blasting the bracket holding up Julius's prized sci-fi movie poster. It fluttered to the ground, a charred hole in the center. Yes, literally, Zavra confirmed through clenched teeth. Now please, if you have any sense of self-preservation, get down. They're turning my living room into Swiss cheese, Julius moaned, watching in dismay as his beloved collectibles melted under repeated plasma strikes. We have to move. Zavra grabbed Julius's arm with surprising gentleness, even as her posture spoke of deadly seriousness. You three, she called to Finn, Elias, and Alina, head to a lower floor or find a back exit. I can hold them off for a short time, but you must not be caught in the crossfire. Elias looked torn. No, we can't just leave you. Alina seconded the sentiment with a determined nod, but then another sizzling beam pulverized the remains of the coffee table, leaving nothing but smoking wood chips. That was enough to spur them into action. We'll find a safe spot and regroup, Alina promised, grabbing Finn by the collar when he hesitated. Julius, come on! Zavra, however, held Julius back by the arm. Wait, if they track me down again, they will use lethal force if they believe I'm unwilling to surrender. Your friends deserve safety. But She swallowed, her eyes flicking toward the swirling dust and smoke. I sense I need you. You're the only one who can help me navigate your planet's resources. Julius's mind reeled. 1 minute he was blowing out birthday candles. Now he was being begged for help by an alien princess embroiled in a cosmic manhunt. Strangely, the bizarre rush of adrenaline made him feel alive for the first time in years. All right, he managed, wiping sweat from his brow. I'm in. But if you've got any high-tech defenses, now's the time. Zavra pursed her lips, scanning the battered apartment with a tinge of regret. I have a personal shield generator, but it's designed for short bursts. The best move is to escape and relocate. Once we're in a more secure area, we can strategize. Summoning her superhuman strength, Zavra hoisted Julius almost effortlessly, bracing him against her hip as though he weighed no more than a child. Hold tight, she instructed. Then, with a running leap, she vaulted out of the shattered window onto the narrow fire escape. Julius clung to her shoulders, heart hammering in his chest as she began a descent that was half climbing, half dropping, avoiding the bright red pulses of energy that trailed them. Sparks bounced off the metal rails with each blast. Several floors below, Finn and Elias were peering over the edge of the building's dumpster-filled alley, clearly trying to wave them down. Alina paced nervously nearby, her arms crossed, an expression tight with concern. You made it, she exclaimed when Zavra and Julius touched down with a metallic clatter. We have to get off the street. If those wardens are prepared for an extended chase, they might have vehicles or advanced gear. A new volley of staccato blasts forced them to scatter, diving behind dumpsters for cover. Zavra bared her teeth in frustration. Their stun beams can be lethal at close range, she warned. We can't remain in the open. Elias risked a peek over the lid of a dumpster. My car is parked around the corner, but so help me if they blow it up. He left the dire outcome unspoken. Julius gave a strained laugh, adrenaline tinged with borderline hysteria. Your car, my entire living room. Seems the casualty count is already too high. Then let's move, Finn urged, motioning with quick, forceful gestures. We'll use the dumpsters for cover, circle around the block. They began a frantic dash down the alley, pressing themselves against graffiti-covered walls as more plasma shots zipped overhead. Night had truly fallen now, the alley illuminated only by flickering neon signs and the occasional street lamp. Their footsteps echoed, the only human sound in the darkness. Julius wondered fleetingly what the neighbors would think of the insane light show. Then he remembered that many in his building were away for the weekend. A twisted stroke of luck. Perhaps it meant fewer bystanders in the line of fire. Stay close, Zavra muttered, pulling Julius next to her with that unearthly strength. His heart hammered, half in terror, half in an exhilarating rush. They rounded the corner. Elias's compact SUV was parked in front of a closed convenience store, its neon sign flickering on its last functional letters. Alina jumped into the passenger seat, Finn took the back seat with Julius, and Zavra crammed herself in last, contorting her tall, graceful frame to fit behind Finn. "Step on it!" Julius shouted as Elias fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life, and they sped off with a screech of tires that probably stripped a good 6 months off the vehicle's life. In the rearview mirror, Julius saw faint red lights streak across the sky behind them. Something about their pattern suggested the wardens were giving chase in their own transport, though it was higher tech than anything he'd ever seen. "We can't go to my place," Alina muttered. "It's the first place they'll look if they tapped into Earth's data networks." Finn swore under his breath. "My spot is even smaller than Julius's, and it's basically a glass fishbowl." Elias wrenched the wheel around a corner, accelerating past a red light. "Then where do we go?" Zavra's eyes snapped to Julius. "Your city must have places with robust walls, minimal entry points, an enclosed environment, some area of high traffic to mask our thermal signatures." Julius blinked, racking his brain for anything that might fit the description in a pinch. He remembered a 24-hour pizzeria near his old campus, a cramped joint with thick brick walls and a single entrance. "There's Jonas's Pizza," he said, voice taut. "It's on 9th Street, one way in and out, plus the ovens are usually running hot. Could help hide our heat signatures or something." Elias made a sharp turn, nearly clipping a parked car. The SUV hurtled down side streets, ignoring the occasional honk of startled motorists. Alina twisted around to face Zavra. "Can you at least explain why your people are after you so fervently? You mentioned a forced marriage, but that doesn't fully justify a pursuit squad with plasma weapons." Finn, hugging the seat with white-knuckled hands, nodded in agreement. "Yeah, no offense, but this level of firepower suggests something bigger is at stake." Zavra exhaled, placing a hand on the seat in front of her for balance, as Elias stomped on the brakes to avoid a collision. "You're correct. My marriage was intended to seal an alliance with the tireless empire, ruled by Lord Cassian, an expansionist tyrant who collects spouses from every star system he conquers, purely to consolidate power. I refused, which caused a major diplomatic crisis. Some factions in my own world's monarchy fear war, so they dispatched the Imperial Wardens to retrieve me, by force if necessary, to complete the deal." The group exchanged uneasy looks. Julius saw Alina's face tighten at the mention of forced marriage. "That's barbaric," she whispered fiercely. "No one should have to be part of that." Zavra gave her a pained but appreciative nod. "I came to Earth because it's relatively uncharted for my people. I hoped I could disappear, at least for a short time, until I found a safer path. I knew little about your society, but I discovered that your world is, how do you say, behind technologically. I suspected it would mask my presence from advanced scanners." "And so you stumbled on a companion service?" Julius asked, eyebrows lifted. The notion was still mind-boggling. Zavra's cheeks colored a subtle turquoise hue, as though she found the admission embarrassing. "I needed funds for travel and anonymity. There was an advertisement that promised discretion, an exotic experience for wealthy patrons. I submitted false credentials. I never anticipated a pursuit so soon." Finn let out a low whistle. "Well, you definitely gave Jules the most unforgettable birthday present ever." Alina touched Zavra's arm gently. "We'll figure this out," she said. "No one should be forced back into an oppressive arrangement, especially not by some power-hungry megalomaniac who collects wives." Zavra's eyes shone with gratitude, even under the flickering city streetlights. The SUV screeched to a halt outside a small, unassuming brick shop. The neon sign read Jonas's Pizza, though the J flickered off and on. A single large window faced the street, the inside lit by fluorescent bulbs that made the thick steam from ovens shine a hazy yellow. Elias killed the engine and turned to the group. "We'll duck in fast. Everyone ready?" "Ready," Julius said, bracing himself. In the seat next to him, Zavra looked both anxious and determined, her posture radiating a poised alertness. He gave her a nod, trying to convey silent reassurance. Whatever insane cosmic entanglement he'd stumbled into, he was in it for the long haul now. Adventure wished for, adventure received. A single bell jingled overhead as Elias led the group into Jonas's Pizza, nearly tripping over the chipped threshold in his haste. The pizzeria was a cramped, rectangular space with faded red and white tiles, a half-dozen tables, and one solitary counter where Jonas himself, tall, wiry, and eternally harried, manhandled dough while juggling phone orders. The walls boasted photos of Jonas posing with local sports teams from decades past, plus a chalkboard list of daily specials that never changed. Tonight, though, the usual lull of late-night business was shattered by the frantic entrance of four disheveled humans, plus one elegant green-skinned figure. Jonas looked up, eyebrows lifting at the sight of Finn's torn jacket and Zavra's extravagant silver dress. A half-formed greeting died on his lips as he took in the tension etched across each face. "Jonas," Julius said in a breathless rush, "sorry for, dropping in like this. Could we maybe use your back room? We've got complications." The older man's gaze landed on Zavra, whose shimmering braids gave off a faint luminescence under the fluorescent lighting. Jonas blinked, speechless, then slid his gaze back to Julius. Recognition dawned. Julius was something of a regular, having once frequented the place during his late-night coding binges in college. If Julius trusted these strangers, Jonas apparently decided, then so would he. "Mi casa, su casa," the pizzeria owner replied, though his expression held plenty of questions. "Back rooms have got a loading door to the alley, but someone mind telling me why it looks like you ran through a war zone?" Finn cast a wary glance at the single window at the front, half expecting to see flickers of red plasma scorching the sidewalk. "No time for details," he said, "but we appreciate this, Jonas. You might want to lock up and close early tonight." "Just a thought." Zavra nodded at Jonas with genuine grace. "Thank you for offering refuge." Her voice, though quiet, carried the kind of regal edge that made the pizzeria owner straighten unconsciously. "We won't put you in danger." Jonas just waved a flour-dusted hand. "No big deal," he said with forced bravado, though his knuckles paled around the rolling pin. "Business is slow anyway." Elias and Alina hurried to the back, searching for a space large enough to accommodate everyone. Zavra kept Julius close, her posture a coiled spring of anxiety. "The wardens will be scanning for me," she warned. "We have only a small window before they pinpoint my location. If they were reckless enough to fire those weapons in your apartment complex, there's no telling what they'll do here." Julius's heart twisted at the memory of his incinerated possessions, but he forced composure. "All right," he breathed, trying to focus. "We can't just keep running blindly. We need a real plan." Moments later, the group clustered inside the dimly lit storage room where shelves of canned tomatoes and plastic-wrapped flour sacks towered above them. The air smelled thickly of yeast and oregano, but at least they had relative privacy. Finn paced in the narrow gap, arms folded. "So we're dealing with interstellar cops who want to abduct Zavra back to her home planet, correct?" He paused, glancing at her for confirmation. She gave a single, resolute nod. "And those guys are armed with plasma-based weapons that can melt a hole through my buddy's entire collection of Star Wars figures," he continued wryly. "So we can't exactly call the local police on them." "We need to think bigger," Alina interjected. "We're not just defending Zavra. We could be dealing with a massive diplomatic fiasco if Earth's authorities get wind of all this." Her features hardened with the realization that the entire planet might soon learn they were no longer alone in the universe. "And we're definitely dealing with a forced intergalactic marriage that'd be an absolute human rights nightmare if it happened on Earth," she said, voice tight. "We can't let them take her." Zavra's expression softened at Alina's protective words. "I promise you, I do not take this lightly. My people value tradition, but this alliance is nothing more than a contract sealed with my future and freedom. Cassian, the man I am supposed to wed, is known for subjugating entire star systems and collecting spouses from each conquest as trophies." She swallowed as though the taste of her own story was bitter. "For so long, I felt powerless under the weight of political pressure. Earth seemed like the best place to hide. Until we inadvertently booked you as some kind of exotic companion," Julius said, still half in disbelief. The memory of how they met felt surreal, as if it belonged in a dream or a comedic sketch gone terribly off script. A flash of guilt nipped at him. He certainly hadn't asked for an alien princess, but the idea that she'd been cornered into that ruse stung. "I'm sorry," he added softly, managing to hold her silver gaze. "We didn't know." "You have nothing to apologize for," Zavra replied. "I accepted the risk to remain hidden. I did not anticipate the wardens would track me here so soon. I only regret dragging you and your friends into the line of fire. She shifted, crossing her arms in a gesture that belied her poised appearance. Julius sensed the thread of tension in her posture, that mix of fear and determination that mirrored his own swirling thoughts. Elias, who had been tapping rapidly on his tablet, finally looked up. I'm trying to see if we can jam or reroute signals in the neighborhood. If those wardens rely on advanced data networks or local satellites to triangulate Zavra's position, we might be able to disrupt that. He turned the screen toward Finn, showing a digital map dotted with blinking icons. If we can just buy a few hours, maybe we can figure out how to fight back. Finn scratched his chin, leaning over the tablet. We're basically outgunned here. We can't outrun them forever. And there's no guarantee they won't burn half the city down in the process. A frown cut across his features. But if we can scramble their tracking systems, we stand a chance of repositioning ourselves somewhere safer. Alina nodded, practical as ever. And maybe we call in some external help. Government? Media? Something that puts a spotlight on them and forces them to back off? She saw the alarm in Zavra's face at that last suggestion. I get it. You're worried about an interstellar incident, but the alternative is letting them quietly whisk you away. We can't let that happen. Zavra exhaled slowly. I do not wish for Earth to become a battlefield, nor do I want to cause panic. The existence of extraterrestrial civilizations is unknown to most of your planet, correct? The group exchanged glances. Yes, Julius confirmed, and let's just say humans don't always handle big shocks gracefully. Some do, but others, not so much. Just then, Jonas poked his head into the storage room. I locked the doors, turned out the lights in front, he whispered anxiously, voice echoing amid the shelves. But there's a group of uniformed guys outside. They don't look like normal cops, or even SWAT. They're weird. Alina's eyes flicked up. They're here already, she muttered. Zavra, can your shield generator cover all of us if they break in? Zavra glanced down at a silver bracelet-like device latched around her wrist. It's designed for one occupant, maybe two if you huddle close. But there are 5 of us. She gave an apologetic look. Finn, noticing her subtle distress, exhaled. Then we can't hold a direct confrontation here. We've got to slip away before they come crashing in. He turned to Elias. Is there a back exit we can use? Elias swept his arm toward the far corner, where a narrow metal door stood behind stacked crates. Out through the loading bay. Let's hope they haven't encircled the building. They hurried toward the back, weaving between the towering stacks of pizza boxes and industrial flour sacks. Jonas, looking both intrigued and terrified, trailed behind. I'll hold them off if they break in, he said, trying for bravado, or at least I'll slow them down with some scalding pizza sauce. A ghost of a smile touched Zavra's lips. Thank you, Jonas, she said. Your generosity will not be forgotten. Elias pressed a switch, and the metal door swung open into the narrow alley. A garbage bin took up most of the passage, leaving only a slender walkway. A flickering streetlight at the far end revealed half a dozen silhouettes at the alley's mouth. They're blocking the exit, Julius whispered, heart pounding. The silhouettes wore matching dark uniforms, their posture unmistakably that of trained enforcers. We're cornered, Alina said under her breath. She glanced around for anything that might offer cover or an alternate route. The building next door was a boarded-up storehouse. Its windows were set high in the concrete walls, unreachable without a ladder. The tension ratcheted with each step the wardens took toward them. Zavra clenched her jaw. If they realize we're pinned, they'll force us into the open. Perhaps I can draw their fire away from the rest of you. No, Julius said a bit louder than he intended, turning heads. He lowered his voice. No, we stick together. We just need a distraction, right? He thought of the small device in his pocket, a personal project that controlled a swarm of miniature drones he'd tinkered with. Originally meant for a coding competition, the contraption was little more than a glorified remote with limited range. But maybe, just maybe, it could buy them a few seconds of chaos. He pulled out the palm-sized controller with blinking LEDs and flicked the power switch. Keep low, he warned the others, inching around the dumpster. He had stashed a handful of prototypes in Elias's car, for a demonstration last week. Luckily, one was still in Julius's coat from earlier. The device might do nothing but hum, or it might create a fleeting swirling cloud of small, half-broken drones that would fill the alley with noise and motion. A heartbeat later, a half-dozen metallic spheres zipped out from beneath the parked cars, lights flashing erratically. As one, they darted into the alley, looping and spinning in random patterns. The wardens recoiled in surprise, leveling their weapons. They fired at the whirling orbs, scorching the air with sizzling arcs. The swirling drones crashed into walls or disintegrated under direct hits, but it was enough of a diversion to throw the wardens into disarray. Now, Finn hissed, pulling Zavram and Julius behind him while Alina and Elias slipped to the opposite side. The group sprinted along the perimeter of the alley, pressed against the damp concrete. One warden caught sight of them, letting off a wild plasma shot that ricocheted off a drain pipe. Sparks rained down dangerously close to Julius's feet. Zavra grabbed his arm, yanking him forward with inhuman speed. They emerged onto the main street, panting. A few startled bystanders gawked at them, but no one seemed bold enough to approach. "The drones are done," Julius gasped, looking at the Palm controller's blank screen. "But at least we made it out for now." Elias surveyed their surroundings. "It won't last. If the wardens are anything like advanced special forces, they'll regroup and track us." Zavra brushed a stray braid from her face, her eyes shining with urgency. "We must find a place with technology strong enough to counter their efforts, or at least cloak me from their scanning. Otherwise, we'll be in constant flight." Then, with a quick but meaningful glance toward Julius, she added, "I suspect your programming expertise might be the key." Julius blinked. "You think I can out-hack an advanced galactic civilization from my laptop?" The idea sounded insane, yet there was a seed of conviction in Zavra's gaze, and a thrill of possibility sparked through him. "They probably won't be expecting Earth's method of brute forcing," Alina chimed in, a small wry grin on her lips. "You always said your coding approach was a bit unorthodox, right, Jules?" Before Julius could reply, the distant wail of sirens cut through the night, signaling that local authorities, or at least some first responders, were on the way. "We can't have a firefight with cops in the mix. The wardens might escalate," Finn remarked, scanning the street for an escape route. Alina steered them away from the main thoroughfare, down a side street with shuttered storefronts. The labyrinth of urban sprawl provided some cover, but it also felt like a maze with no clear exit. "Wait," Alina said, eyes lighting up. "My sister's place." She pulled up short, then continued more quietly. "The building's brand new, almost fortress-like. She's on vacation for a month, and she told me I could use her key if I needed somewhere quiet to work. She travels half the year anyway. It's all modern construction, thick walls, security cameras. It might buy us time to plan." Elias frowned thoughtfully. "But is it in your sister's name? If the wardens access local records, they'll see your family." Alina's lips curved. "She kept her maiden name. We're rarely linked officially. Besides, it's better than huddling in an alley or a pizzeria storeroom." Finn shrugged. "We have limited options. Let's do it." A tense shuffle through the shadows brought them to a modest apartment tower, taller than its older neighbors and outfitted with tinted windows that reflected the city lights. Alina punched in a code on a small keypad near the side entrance, and a heavy steel door slid open with a hiss. The foyer beyond was sleek and minimalist: polished floors, recessed lighting, and a faint aroma of lemon-scented cleaning products. The group piled into a narrow elevator that hummed upward. Zavra remained silent, though Julius could sense her tension. He watched her reflection in the elevator door's metal surface, noticing how her posture remained perfectly straight, gaze flicking to each corner as though searching for hidden threats. Despite the exhaustion creeping in, she radiated a quiet elegance. Something about her presence tugged at Julius in a way he couldn't fully explain. Part admiration, part protectiveness, and part that thrill of the unknown. They exited on the 18th floor, the hallway lit by soft overhead fixtures spaced at exact intervals. Alina led them to the door at the far end, sliding an electronic keycard through the lock. "Welcome to my sister's domain," she said, forcing a small laugh. The door swung open to reveal a surprisingly spacious unit. The furniture was modern and sparse, lots of glacis, chrome, and white upholstery, easily the polar opposite of Julius's cluttered, tech-centric nest. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping view of the cityscape, neon signs twinkling in the distance. Elias stepped carefully over a pristine rug as though afraid to leave footprints. "This place is nice," he murmured, nodding in approval. Finn, still amped from adrenaline, peered into adjoining rooms, presumably checking for potential intruders. "Clear," he pronounced, though the tension in his shoulders didn't abate. Zavra and Julius gravitated to the main living area, where a large glass coffee table stood before a comfortable-looking sectional sofa. Alina quietly closed the curtains, plunging them into a cocoon of relative privacy. At last, the group exhaled collectively, exhaustion settling in now that they had a moment to breathe. "Okay," Julius said, turning to Elias with a pointed look. "We need a hacking strategy, or a jamming device, or something. If the wardens can track Zavra, we need to scramble their signals." Elias sank onto the sofa, tablet in hand. "My skill set is mostly earthbound," he warned. "But if Zavra can tell us anything about their scanning methods, we might adapt." Zavra sat on the edge of a chair, posture still regal despite the tension. "They'll use a quantum-based triangulation system, leveraging any local communications infrastructure. If we disrupt that feed at multiple junctures, we may throw them off. It's not foolproof, but it's a start." Julius booted up the thin laptop he'd managed to snatch earlier, thankful it had escaped the plasma barrage at his apartment. "We'll do it in stages," he proposed. "First, we jam their immediate scanning signals with some improvised electromagnetic noise. Then, we feed them false coordinates via local tower pings." He frowned. "But we need a big enough range to confuse them. We can't just hijack one cell tower. We probably need multiple data points." "And time," Alina added, settling onto a stool by the kitchen counter. "We'll need enough time to implement all this without them finding us first." She rubbed at her temples. "Also, do we have any idea who's leading these wardens? Are they under direct orders from your father, or from Cassian, or someone else entirely?" Zavra's eyes clouded with worry. "My father, King Tannen, is ailing. He may be desperate to uphold the treaty. If Cassian's envoy convinced our royal court that the wedding must happen swiftly, the wardens could be operating under combined directives from both sides. Their mission is simple: capture me before I can publicly denounce the arrangement." She folded her hands in her lap, the silver eyes flickering with steely resolve. "But I will not be a pawn. If there is any path to freedom, mine and that of my people, I have to take it." Finn exhaled softly. "That's a lot of weight on your shoulders." Zavra offered a half smile, gratitude mingling with sadness. "It is my duty, but it's also my conviction. I refuse to let my future be a mere bargaining chip." She paused, glancing at Julius. "I should also mention that Cassian's forces are not limited to the wardens. He has mercenaries, bounty hunters, people who might act outside official channels. If we don't resolve this soon, the threat may escalate." A brief silence fell as that realization sank in. Then Elias, brow furrowed in concentration, tapped vigorously at his tablet. "We can at least set the first stage in motion," he said, sliding the device to Julius. "See that code? It can temporarily flood a few local communication frequencies, maybe mask us for a bit." Julius nodded, taking the tablet and scanning the lines. "I can refine it, piggyback on the city's existing networks. With enough servers in play, we can create a false signal for them to chase." Alina pulled open a cabinet, rifling through her sister's impeccably organized kitchen. "I'm not sure we have real food here," she muttered, "but I can offer bottled water and some freeze-dried snack bars." Finn, leaning against the wall, snorted. "We're on an alien fugitive mission with advanced plasma weaponry after us, and you're offering snack bars?" Alina's tense laugh betrayed her fraying nerves. "We're all battered, exhausted, and might be up all night coding or planning. We'll need energy." Zavra tried to stand, wavering slightly before steadying herself. Julius jumped to her side, concern flooding his expression. "You okay?" She nodded, though the subtle tremor in her posture hinted otherwise. "Just tired," she admitted. "Royal protocols on Vashari Prime never really prepared me for hours of chase and combat. And I didn't finish that slice of pizza at Jonas's." "Sit," Alina insisted, guiding her back onto the chair. "We'll figure out the next steps." Finn rummaged in the kitchen until he found a half-crushed energy drink. He offered it to Zavra with a grin. One of Earth's greatest inventions, he joked. She eyed the neon can suspiciously but eventually accepted, taking a tentative sip that made her nose crinkle. It's very sweet. As they settled into a tense routine, Alina pacing, Finn occasionally glancing at the windows, Elias and Julius hunched over screens. Zavra's gaze lingered on Julius. She observed the flicker of determination in his eyes, how his fingers flew over the keyboard with an almost musical rhythm. A surge of gratitude and something deeper welled up in her. When Julius's coding paused long enough to glance her way, their eyes locked, and in that moment, the swirling crisis around them felt slightly more manageable. Around midnight, the group had fallen into an uneasy lull. Elias and Julius were deep in code, orchestrating a makeshift system of signal interference. Alina, still wide awake from stress, rifled through her sister's closets to find comfortable sweatpants and t-shirts for those who needed them. Finn sat cross-legged on the floor, occasionally dozing before snapping awake at a slight noise. Zavra, who had changed into a plain t-shirt and shorts borrowed from Alina, paced the apartment's length in careful steps, her regal bearing oddly undiminished even in borrowed Earth clothing. Julius finally closed the laptop, rubbing stiff shoulders. "I think we're ready for a small test," he announced, powering up a spidery contraption Elias had assembled from a tangle of spare electronics. The device whirred quietly, a jumble of circuit boards and antenna fragments that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie prop room. "If we activate it, we'll scramble local scans in a 2-block radius. Won't last long, but it might buy us enough time to see if we can hack into the warden's main communication lines." Finn perked up, rolling his neck. "And if they pick up on our signal jam, they'll know we're in the area." Alina nodded grimly. "We have to be ready for them to zero in on us the second they sense interference." Zavra lowered her gaze, shoulders squared. "We do it. Better to confront them on our terms than wait until they track me down helplessly." She flicked her silver eyes to the laptop. "Besides, if we gain access to their systems, we might uncover details of Cassian's broader plan. If the wardens have official directives, we could exploit any contradictory orders, or prove that the monarchy hasn't sanctioned lethal force." Julius and Elias exchanged a determined look. "Let's do it," Julius said. "The more we know, the better chance we have of fighting back." He pressed a button, and the improvised device gave a shrill beep before settling into a low hum. Data scrolled across the laptop's screen as the code engaged, sending out pulses of electromagnetic disruption on frequencies most Earth devices wouldn't even register. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then numbers on the screen spiked. "We've got a handshake from an unidentified local transmitter," Elias muttered in excitement. "Likely the warden's gear. They're trying to offset the jam." Julius typed furiously. "I'm bridging into their signal path, just enough to glean some metadata." More lines of incomprehensible code flickered by. Suddenly, a distant rumble seemed to shake the building, followed by the stuttering flicker of lights. Finn was on his feet in an instant, crossing to the window. "Something's happening outside," he reported. "Lights on half the block just dimmed." Zavra's breath caught. "They might be using a gravitational disruptor as a fallback measure. We can't let them deploy it here. Structures could collapse." Fear rippled through the group. They knew the wardens had advanced tech, but seeing its destructive potential in action was another matter entirely. Elias's tablet lit up with new data. "Wait, something else is piggybacking on our jam. Another signal. Could be a Trojan from the wardens? Or a different group entirely." Confusion threaded his voice. "I'm scanning its origin now. It's off-world. Cassian's mercenaries? Another faction?" Julius frowned. "We're in the dark here. Zavra, do you have any idea who else might be searching for you?" The tension soared. Zavra's face betrayed concern, as though a new possibility had just dawned on her. "There are rival factions in the monarchy who'd prefer I vanish, some who might benefit if our alliance with Cassian never took place. But I never imagined they'd risk sending yet another force to Earth." All at once, Alina's phone rang, the shrill tone setting everyone's nerves on edge. She glanced at the caller ID, brow furrowing. My phone's blocked." She lifted it to her ear cautiously. "Hello?" Her expression shifted to alarmed disbelief. A holographic transmission, it says, coming from outside Earth? She swallowed hard. They're, they're asking for Zavra by name. For several long, tense moments, Alina simply stared at her phone. No one in the apartment dared speak, the only sound coming from the low hum of Elias's makeshift jamming device. Finally, she tapped the screen to accept the mysterious holographic call. A wavering beam of light projected itself several feet above the living room's plush white carpet, forming the outline of a tall, thin figure swathed in layered robes. Despite the call's obvious off-world origin, the hologram's resolution was surprisingly crisp. They could pick out the being's elongated limbs and pale sea-green complexion. Zavra of Vashari Prime, the hologram intoned, voice resonating with authority. I speak on behalf of the coalition of loyalists within your royal court. Its luminous eyes flicked over the humans, then focused on Zavra. We have monitored your presence on Earth. Our intelligence indicates the Wardens and Cassian's mercenaries are closing in. We offer safe passage back to Vashari Prime, on one condition. Zavra's expression tightened. A moment ago, she'd admitted the possibility of other factions vying for power in her absence, but she still seemed taken aback to hear from them directly. And that condition? She asked, crossing her arms over the borrowed t-shirt. The robed figure inclined its head with ponderous slowness. That you formally sign away your claim to the throne, removing all possibility of your ascension. You would never be forced to wed Cassian, and the monarchy would remain stable under the different line of succession. A hush fell over the group. Alina's gaze flicked between Zavra and the hologram, tension visible in every muscle. They want you to give up your future, Finn murmured, half under his breath. But is that better than being dragged back against your will? Elias and Julius remained silent, warily assessing the newcomer on the phone's holofeed. It was impossible to guess the entity's true intentions from the spectral silhouette alone. Zavra's voice was cold. If you remove me from the line of succession, you jeopardize any influence I might still wield to protect my people from Cassian's empire. My father's arrangement with him is dangerous and exploitative. If I relinquish my standing, the coalition might do the same or worse. The hollow figure made no move to dispute this. It merely stared in that otherworldly way. We believe a new monarchy, unburdened by your father's failing health and your rebellion, would be more stable. You would have your freedom, but the rest of the kingdom would remain intact. Julius finally spoke up. So that's the deal? His voice cracked slightly with the intensity of the moment. You whisk her off Earth, promise she won't be forced to marry Cassian, and in exchange she can never return to challenge him. She becomes irrelevant to the throne. Something about the ultimatum infuriated him, though he could only imagine how Zavra felt. This was her entire life, her legacy. Yes, confirmed the robed silhouette. It is the only compromise that keeps Cassian's aggression at bay while preserving order. Decide quickly, princess. The wardens will not wait. The figure's gaze swept the apartment again. Your Earth companions cannot shield you forever. Zavra's jaw tightened. No, she said quietly but decisively. I will not sign away my birthright on the terms of a secret holographic ultimatum. My father is ill, but I believe he would not condone the tyranny Cassian represents. The coalition is wrong to assume the only solution is to push me aside. The figure stiffened. So be it, it said, voice vibrating. We wash our hands of your fate. When Cassian's forces arrive, we will not intervene. You doom yourself, and perhaps your father's kingdom, to violence. The hologram vanished in a flicker, leaving the phone's screen dark. A collective exhalation passed through the group, and Zavra's shoulders dropped in mingled relief and dread. For a time, no one spoke. The faint hum of equipment and the distant sounds of city traffic through the closed windows were the only indicators that life continued outside their bubble of interstellar politics. Finally, Alina leaned over, pressing the heel of her hand to her forehead. That was a lot, she muttered. So now we have at least two separate factions, Cassian's wardens and your court's coalition, gunning for you or at least pressuring you. And we still don't know how many other players are on the field. Elias nodded, running a hand through his short hair. One wants to force you back for a marriage. Oh, I know. The other wants you to step down entirely. Neither option is exactly great. He gave Zavra an apologetic frown, clearly struggling to imagine the weight on her shoulders. Finn's gaze flicked to the laptop where the code interface still glowed ominously. Meanwhile, how's that infiltration of the Warden's signals coming, Jules? Julius typed rapidly for a moment, scanning lines of text. Well, we've learned that they've established a covert outpost somewhere in the city. They're interfacing with local power grids to run something big, likely the gravitational disruptor that made the lights flicker. If they power that up fully, entire buildings could fold in on themselves. A hush fell. Even the most stoic among them seemed rattled by the idea of a catastrophic gravitational event happening in the middle of the city. Zavra exhaled, pushing to her feet. We have to stop them from deploying it. Earth's population is unaware of these conflicts. They shouldn't suffer for my attempt at freedom. Her silver eyes swept across Julius, Elias, Finn, and Alina. I'm open to suggestions. If that device activates at full strength, thousands might be harmed. Elias chewed his lip. If we destroy their power source, we disable the disruptor. Or if we sabotage their control system, they can't calibrate it. Alina thought aloud, pacing again in the minimalist living room. There's a major tech expo in 2 days at the downtown convention center. The city's been rerouting power lines to handle the event's big demonstrations. If the Wardens tapped into that grid feed, it could be their best shot at harnessing massive energy discreetly. Finn snapped his fingers. I remember seeing trucks around the convention center, like they were installing new transformers. Think that's where the outpost is? Julius tapped at the laptop, pulling up a city grid map. That area is under construction. Perfect cover for them to hide advanced tech behind the shell of Earth's own hardware. Zavra clenched her jaw. If we're correct, then in 2 days they might have enough power to blanket half the city in a gravitational meltdown. We can't allow that. Cassian's goons are probably betting on me turning myself in before that deadline. An invisible weight pressed on them all. Sure, they'd managed a few near escapes, but confronting a fully armed alien outpost was another matter. Alina's phone beeped, indicating a text message. She glanced down. It's from a friend who does logistics at the convention center, she said, eyes widening. Strange men asking about sub-basement access wanted to see the main power lines. That pretty much confirms our hunch. She looked up, swallowing. They're setting up. We either find a way to undermine them, or they hold the entire city hostage. Elias let out a humorless chuckle. No pressure, right? Then with sudden conviction he added, we do have one advantage. We know more about them than they know about us, especially if you can keep jamming them, Jules. We might sabotage them from inside. Zavra nodded, a fierce spark in her eyes. Yes, and if I appear at the convention center, some public forum or stage, maybe I can force the Wardens to show themselves. Then we can expose them. My people might intervene, or Earth's authorities might realize something is amiss. Either way, Cassian's plan to keep it all in the shadows unravels. They spent much of the next 2 days preparing in feverish secrecy. Alina used her contacts to secure a quiet corner of the convention center's schedule, billing it as a panel on futuristic science and technology. Ordinarily, such a panel might draw a modest crowd, but she seeded rumors online, some subtle, some not, that a demonstration of truly alien technology would take place. Meanwhile, Finn reached out to an old acquaintance in private security to discreetly spread the word that something big might go down at the event. The idea was simple. If they could gather enough civilian eyes and cameras, the Wardens would be forced to operate in the spotlight, limiting their overt aggression. Elias and Julia scrambled to bolster the signal jamming device, adding extra antenna arrays and coding new infiltration scripts. If the Wardens tried to siphon massive power, they'd trip hidden triggers that Elias had installed in the city's utility software. With luck, it would both slow them down and feed them false readings, buying a crucial window of time. Zavra contributed her own knowledge of Vashari Prime's technology, describing how alien devices might integrate or camouflage themselves within Earth equipment. Though she was no engineer, she'd grown up surrounded by starship building guilds and high-tech palace staff. By the morning of the convention panel, tension had knotted all of their nerves. They gathered outside the massive glass and steel complex, its curved facade reflecting the bright city skyline. A steady stream of attendees, ranging from tech entrepreneurs and science enthusiasts to costume cosplayers, filtered through the doors. Oversized banners advertised panels on robotics, gaming tournaments, and the reveal of next-gen virtual reality headsets. One banner read futuristic science, fact, or fiction, with a smaller subline that Alina had quietly arranged. Witness the universe's greatest surprises. Finn whistled low as they joined the crowd, scanning for anything unusual. If the wardens are here, they'll blend in with the staff or vendors, he said, glancing over rows of booths with futuristic decor. They're advanced enough to fake credentials or simply mind trick their way through, if that's a thing. Zavra, wearing a long coat and a subtle hoodie over her braided hair, surveyed the throng. No open plasma fire yet, she murmured. That's good. They're playing it quiet. Alina led them to a backstage corridor, showing ID badges that labeled them as panel speakers. An event coordinator gave them a cursory glance but didn't seem suspicious. You're on in 20 minutes. The stage is behind that curtain, the coordinator said before rushing off to handle another crisis of scheduling. The backstage area smelled of new carpeting and leftover coffee. Folding chairs, half-crated electronics, and rolling garment racks cluttered the corners. Elias checked his watch. All right, final prep. Jules, you ready? Julius nodded, powering on his laptop. The custom-coded infiltration was primed to disrupt the warden's outpost signals as soon as they detected a spike in power usage. Ready as I'll ever be, he said. His heart thrummed in his chest, equal parts excitement and dread. Alina opened a discreet door leading to a side stairwell. Finn and I will slip out and roam the expo floor. If we spot wardens or mercenaries, we'll warn you. Zavra, you and Julius handle the panel. Make your big statement. Draw them out. She paused, meeting Zavra's gaze. You sure about this? Once you go on stage, you'll be on cameras everywhere. It'll blow the lid off alien secrecy. Zavra's look hardened with determination. That's the point. If my father's court sees me addressing Earth publicly, they might realize Cassian is forcing a confrontation. And Cassian won't be able to hide behind half-truths. If exposing myself means saving Earth from the gravitational disruptor, I'll do it. Her gaze flicked to Julius. You're still with me? He felt a warmth at her question. Absolutely, he said. Let's give them a show they won't forget. When Julius stepped onto the small stage with Zavra at his side, the overhead lights nearly blinded him. Rows of seats fanned out in a modest auditorium, maybe a couple hundred people, far more than he had expected. Word must have spread. Some audience members were live streaming on their phones, a few wore cosplay outfits, and others looked like genuine industry professionals, notebooks and VR rigs in tow. A large projection screen behind the stage displayed Alina's cryptic tagline, Futuristic Science, Fact or Fiction. He cleared his throat, adjusting the mic. Hello everyone, he began, forcing confidence into his voice. My name is Julius Morgan, and this is my colleague, Zavra. The hush that fell over the audience was tangible. Zavra, wearing the hood to partly conceal her face, stepped forward with measured grace. We are here to talk about, well, the future, yours and perhaps others as well. She glanced at Julius, who nodded, heart pounding. Before Julius could continue, a voice boomed from the auditorium sound system, one that did not belong to any staff member. Citizens of Earth, it said with patronizing enunciation. Pay close attention. A ripple of murmurs swept the crowd as a figure emerged at the rear of the auditorium, stepping into the aisle. Though dressed in a crisp business suit that might pass for ordinary, the sheen of his skin and the impossible gold tint of his eyes betrayed him instantly. He was not human. Zavra let out a barely perceptible gasp. That's one of Cassian's envoys, she whispered. Julius recognized the symbol pinned to the man's lapel, a stylized crest that matched what Zavra had once described as Cassian's empire insignia. The envoy strode up the center aisle with an air of quiet menace, ignoring the audience of members who craned their necks and snapped photos. Zavra, he said, stopping near the front row. The overhead lights glinted off the unnatural golden hue of his eyes. Your fiancé, Lord Cassian, requests your immediate return. You have violated multiple diplomatic treaties by absconding to a primitive world. End this spectacle or face the consequences. Zavra pulled back her hood. A collective gasp swept the crowd as her emerald skin and luminous braids came into full view. Phones rose in unison, capturing the moment. It's true, she said into the microphone. her voice resonating through the speakers. I am not from Earth. I am Princess Zavra of Ashari Prime, and I refuse to be a pawn in Cassian's scheme. The hush that followed was broken by scattered shouts of astonishment, disbelief, or excitement. Some people rose to their feet, straining for a better view. The envoy's gaze swept the room, unimpressed. This stunt changes nothing, he said. Surrender yourself now, or your precious humans will learn what true technology can do. Julius felt anger spike. You mean the gravitational disruptor you're setting up? He shot back, voice echoing. We know all about it, and we've taken measures to expose you. A ripple of shock passed through the audience. People were filming everything, broadcasting it live to the internet, an unstoppable wave of shared data. The envoy sneered, flicking his wrist. A small device emerged from his sleeve, hovering in midair like a metallic orb. It pulsed with a scarlet glow. We had hoped to retrieve you quietly, Princess, he said, addressing Zavra. But you insist on making a show. The orb flashed red, and a holographic feed materialized overhead, revealing a subterranean chamber with banks of alien machinery. Julius recognized the faint outline of the city's main power lines. Workers, likely disguised wardens, moved in the background, aligning a large apparatus that crackled with arcs of bluish energy. This is real time, the envoy stated, letting the audience drink in the horrifying image. One command from me, and that gravitational disruptor will flatten several city blocks. Let us see if your Earth's so-called authorities can do anything in time. Pandemonium erupted as soon as the hologram flickered into view. Audience members jolted upright, some stumbling toward the exits. Others, phones still raised, hurled rapid-fire questions. Alina, who had been waiting in the wings, sprang on stage. She grabbed a second microphone. Everyone, please stay calm. This is not a drill, but we have an opportunity to stop it. Her voice fought against the rising panic. From the corner of his eye, Julius saw Finn and Elias enter the auditorium, pushing against the tide of retreating audience members. They rushed toward the stage, Elias's tablet clutched tightly in his hand. We've located the disruptor's power source, Elias hissed, leaning close to Julius. They're definitely beneath the convention center. I'm intercepting bursts of energy in the sub-basement, but something's jamming my remote override attempts. The envoy smirked, hearing Elias's words. Your archaic technology can't breach our encryption, human, he said coldly. Cassian does not bargain with primitives. The flickering feed overhead showed the wardens powering up the gravitational disruptor, the faint hum intensifying. Shockwaves were visible on the edges of the image, distorting the walls as the machine built energy. Zavra drew herself up, stepping closer to the envoy. Don't do this, she warned, voice trembling with suppressed fury. This planet has done nothing to deserve your wrath. I will not allow you to murder innocents in a bid to force my compliance. To Julius's alarm, she reached out and seized the hovering device in her bare hand. Sparks arced across her fingers as the envoy's expression shifted from smug to alarmed. A surge of energy crackled between Zavra's palm and the orb. She winced, but maintained her chip, attempting to wrest control from the envoy. Electricity danced along her braided hair, and the overhead hologram briefly flickered, then stabilized again. A wave of shock passed through the crowd. The sight of an otherworldly woman grappling with what appeared to be high-tech weaponry was something out of science fiction made real. Julius, Zavra cried, voice tight with strain, if you can disrupt the master signal, I can break its link to the sub-basement system. Julius nodded, adrenaline jolting through him. Elias, keep feeding me the location data, he ordered, fumbling with his laptop. He typed furiously, trying to reroute the infiltration scripts he'd prepared. He could see the raw code spiking in his interface, massive power surges swirling through the city's grid. Seconds later, a flash of red light blinded him as the envoy lunged at Zavra. She staggered, still clutching the device, and the feed overhead wobbled violently. Let go, you ignorant child, the envoy growled, wrestling her. Finn and Alina scrambled to intercept, but the man moved impossibly fast, reflexes enhanced by alien physiology. He backhanded Finn, sending him sprawling, then lashed out at Alina's mic stand, knocking her off balance. Elias braced Julius as the stage shook with the force of the struggle. The audience was in full retreat now, some shouting that they'd called the police, others filming from behind rows of seats. "I'm almost in the subroutine," Julius shouted over the clamor, eyes glued to the screen. "We can jam them fully if I can just there." He slammed the enter key, initiating a wave of false signals across the city's power grid. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the overhead holograms sputtered, lines of static running through the feed. The wardens in the sub-basement paused mid-motion as their readouts presumably glitched. The envoy roared in frustration, turning to glare at Julius. "You dare," he began, but Zavra twisted the orb in her hand, and a thunderous pop erupted. Sparks rained down, the overhead display collapsing in a burst of static. Zavra stumbled backward with a small cry, releasing the twisted remains of the orb to clatter on the stage floor. Smoke curled from her fingertips, and a faint glow of pain flickered in her silver eyes. Julius abandoned his laptop, rushing to her side. "Zav, are you okay?" he demanded, gently touching her arm. She gave a shaky nod. "I just need a moment." She squeezed her eyes shut, regaining composure. Alina, recovering from her tumble, hurried over to support Zavra on the other side. The envoy glared, chest heaving, the golden hue of his eyes seeming to pulse with anger. "You may have severed the direct link, but Cassian's plan is unstoppable. The disruptor is already near full charge. Without the orbital override, it will discharge uncontrollably. Do you understand? You've doomed this entire sector of the city to catastrophic gravitational collapse." A hush fell among the few who remained in the auditorium, eyes wide with terror. Elias cursed under his breath. He might be right. If that device can't be guided now, it might just run wild and implode everything. Finn, wincing from his earlier blow, still managed to fix the envoy with a fierce glare. "Then we shut it down manually," he growled. "Where's the sub-basement entrance?" Alina gestured to a side door near the auditorium's stage. "Service corridors lead down to the building's lower levels. We'll have to move fast." She shot a glance at Julius, who was hastily collecting his gear. "You in?" Julius nodded grimly, stepping in front of Zavra protectively. "Zav, you should stay back. Let us handle—" "No!" she cut him off. Though her voice trembled from the exertion of wrestling the alien device, her resolve was clear. "I know more about advanced tech than any of you. I'm coming." She squared her shoulders and turned to face the envoy. "I won't let you terrorize Earth or force me to become Cassian's bride. Consider this your last chance to stand down." A twisted smile tugged at the envoy's lips. He raised a sleek, silvery sidearm, leveling it at Zavra. Finn lunged forward, but the envoy pulled the trigger, and nothing happened. The weapon's emitter fizzled, apparently scrambled by Julius's jamming. Furious, the envoy attempted to adjust the sidearm, but Alina blindsided him, driving her shoulder into his midsection with surprising force. He staggered. Finn joined in, and they wrestled him to the ground with combined effort. The man's superhuman strength made him a formidable foe, but with Alina's strategic grapples and Finn's raw power, they managed to pin him down. "Go," Alina panted at Julius and Elias. "Find the disruptor. We'll hold him." Zavra lingered, reluctant to leave her allies behind, but Alina jerked her head meaningfully toward the exit. "This city doesn't have much time. We'll be fine." With a final nod, Zavra turned on her heel, scooping up the battered orb for any salvageable data, then motioned for Julius and Elias to follow. They dashed off stage, weaving through the deserted backstage area and into the service quarters beyond. Flickering overhead fluorescent lights cast stark shadows against concrete walls. Occasional bursts of radio chatter filtered in from somewhere, likely the event's security team struggling to contain the panic. Julius's mind reeled. Only a short time ago, he'd been a frustrated coder debugging lines of JavaScript alone in his apartment. Now he was sprinting through subterranean hallways, trying to prevent an alien superweapon from leveling a city block. Elias led the way, referencing a crudely drawn map on his tablet. "Service elevator near the east wing," he muttered, flinging open a metal door. Beyond it, a small freight elevator waited, glaring overhead light showing a narrow interior. They piled in, punching the lowest possible button, sub-level 3. The elevator rattled downward. Julius's stomach churned as he pictured the gravitational disruptor revving up with each passing second. Zavra stood between them, posture rigid. Cassian's technology is advanced, but it's not invincible, she said softly, voice edged with steely resolve. If we cut power or initiate a meltdown in the capacitors, we can shut it down, but the discharge might be dangerous. Julius forced a tight nod. We'll figure it out. None of them spoke further, focusing instead on the clang of the elevator descending toward whatever awaited them below. The elevator door slid open onto a dim corridor, faintly lit by emergency lamps. A deep mechanical hum vibrated through the floor, letting them know they were close to the disruptor. Elias motioned them forward, and they crept down the hallway, passing locked storage rooms with cryptic signage. The air felt unnaturally warm, as if the machinery was generating a tremendous amount of heat. Rounding a corner, they caught their first glimpse of the warden's subterranean outpost. A makeshift command center sprawled across what must have been a vacant loading bay, lined with alien hardware. Hunched figures in dark uniforms fiddled with glowing consoles. In the center of the room loomed the disruptor itself, an imposing structure of twisting metal coils in throbbing blue energy fields, each coil crackling with arcs of power. The entire device emitted a bass-heavy drone that rattled Julius's teeth. We'll never sneak by unnoticed, Elias murmured. Even if we did, we'd need to access those consoles to shut it down. Zavra nodded, gaze narrowing in calculation. Then we cause a distraction. She handed Julius the battered orb she'd wrested from the envoy. I've disabled its direct control function, but its energy core might create a feedback surge. I can throw it into one of their power conduits. That'll definitely get their attention, Julius said, swallowing. Let's just hope it doesn't blow the entire place before we can manually power off the disruptor. Elias sighed, shoulders tensed. We'll have seconds, maybe. Let's do it. He clutched his tablet, rewriting code on the fly. I'll handle console override. Julius, keep the wardens off my back if they rush me. Zavra, do your thing with the orb. They exchanged a quick look, equal parts fear and solidarity, then launched into action. Zavra edged around the perimeter, hugging the shadowy recesses of the loading bay. Meanwhile, Elias took a deep breath and strode right toward the nearest console with exaggerated confidence, hoping to pass as one of the disguised staff. Sure enough, one or two wardens glanced at him but didn't react immediately. Perhaps they assumed he was just another technician, overshadowed by the swirling chaos of the near-complete meltdown. Julius followed at a short distance, heart hammering. The hum of the disruptor swelled, radiating waves of heated air that buffeted him in pulses. Elias sidled up to the console and began typing. A warden, noticing something amiss, barked a question in an unfamiliar language. Just checking the capacitor levels, Elias bluffed, not bothering to turn around. The warden's suspicion flared. He stepped closer, just in time for Zavra to hurl the battered orb into a row of crackling power conduits on the far side of the outpost. A brilliant flash lit the chamber, white-hot arcs leaping from conduit to conduit. Several wardens cried out, toppling backward as console sparks scorched their uniforms. One or two tried to return fire with small plasma devices, but the feedback surge knocked them off balance. The entire facility erupted in confusion as alarms shrieked and the overhead lights blinked wildly. Julius seized the moment, lunging at the suspicious warden, who was raising his weapon at Elias. Though Julius lacked Finn's physique, adrenaline and desperation fueled him. He tackled the warden, sending them both sprawling against the metal deck. Pain flared in Julius's shoulder, but he gritted his teeth. "Elias, do it now," he yelled. "I'm trying," Elias shouted back over the cacophony. His fingers flew across the console, navigating menus in an alien script half-translated by the infiltration software. Sparks rained down from a damaged overhead cable. Meanwhile, Zavra darted through tangles of machinery, smashing glowing panels with precise strikes, each blow severing wires or disabling modules. Wardens shouted curses, scrambling to contain the sabotage. The disruptor itself shuddered, the coils vibrating violently. A high-pitched whine layered over the low drone, setting Julius's teeth on edge. He wrestled the warden's plasma weapon away, flinging it across the floor. Behind him, Zavra locked eyes with Julius, giving a grim nod. They both sensed time was running out. Elias slammed a final command into the console. "Initiating force shutdown," he shouted, sweat streaming down his face. "We need to get clear of the main coils." The disruptor's coils began to dim in cycles, but an angry flicker of energy indicated it wasn't going quietly. Intense arcs leapt between segments of the machinery, accompanied by thunderous pops that shook the sub-basement. Julius scrambled to his feet, pulling Zavra with him around a half-wall of storage crates. Elias ran over a moment later, half-ducked. "It's discharging unpredictably," he gasped. "But I've locked out the control override. They can't bring it back online once it's done cycling." Several wardens attempted to chase them, but a fresh burst of electricity pushed them back, driving them to seek cover. Suddenly, the entire device surged with one last, violent discharge. A sphere of distorted air pressure rippled outward. Julius felt his stomach lurch, as though gravity itself had hiccuped. The waves slammed into the crates, toppling them. He pressed himself against the floor, arms shielding his head. The lights flickered once, twice, and then, with a guttural groan of twisting metal, the disruptor's coils collapsed inward. The giant apparatus simply died, sputtering out in a shower of sparks and acrid smoke. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The sub-basement lingered in a haze of burnt wires, blinking emergency lights, and the moans of stunned wardens. Elias coughed, dusting off debris. "Did we do it?" he managed, voice rasping. Zavra pushed herself upright, glancing at the now inert machine. "Yes," she said, relief shaking her tone. "The meltdown was contained. The city is safe." Julius closed his eyes for a moment, his chest tight with the aftermath of sheer terror. Then he heard more footsteps echoing. Heavy boots, urgent voices. For a split second, he feared more wardens. But it was Finn, Alina, and an entire squad of wide-eyed convention security guards. They poured into the sub-basement, flashlights and pepper spray at the ready. One guard hollered into a radio, calling for backup from local police, who must have been alerted. The tension was broken by Finn's exhalation of relief when he spotted the trio. "You guys are alive. We pinned that envoy upstairs, but he wriggled free. We tried to chase him, but holy, what is all this?" Alina's gaze swept across the destroyed disruptor. Her mouth opened, then closed, at a loss for words. "We should get out of here," she finally said, "before the authorities show up with too many questions we can't answer." Zavra nodded, though a trace of sadness tinged her relief. "The wardens have lost their advantage, but Cassian won't stop with one failure. Still, at least Earth is safe for now." She reached for Julius's hand, and he gave it a reassuring squeeze. Under the watchful eyes of the convention's security guards, who themselves were too shell-shocked to fully process the scene, Zavra, Julius, Elias, Finn, and Alina slipped away through a secondary corridor. The building's main hall was in disarray, with crowds lingering to see if the alien demonstration was real or an elaborate hoax. Police sirens wailed outside, and rumors buzzed through social media about a cosmic threat being neutralized beneath the expo floor. They found a service elevator back up to ground level, emerging near a side exit. Blinking in the late afternoon sun, they stared at the chaotic swirl of reporters, bystanders, and official vehicles. The group ducked behind a row of potted shrubs, trying to decide their next move. "We might need to vanish for a while," Elias mused, looking at Zavra, "at least until the immediate media storm dies down." But Zavra tilted her chin up, scanning the throng of news cameras with a steady gaze. "I don't think anonymity is an option anymore," she said. "My existence is out. Cassian's infiltration attempts are exposed. Earth is about to learn it's not alone in the universe." Julius felt a twist of nerves at the scale of that reality, but also a sense of conviction. "Maybe that's good," he said, his voice low but certain. "If people see what's happening, Cassian can't operate in secret, and you won't be forced into hiding." A flicker of a smile played across Zavra's lips. Perhaps it's time to step fully into the light. They quietly regrouped at Alina's sister's apartment, the same sleek high-rise they had used as a temporary base. Getting in proved challenging. News vans and curious onlookers swarmed the streets, and the building's lobby bustled with anxious residents, wondering why half the city's power had fluctuated. But a bit of quick thinking from Alina, plus Zavra's willingness to remain discreet in an oversized hoodie, allowed them to slip past security and ride the elevator unnoticed. Inside the apartment, everyone practically collapsed. Finn sank onto the couch, wincing at the bruise on his ribs from the envoy's hit. Elias slumped in an armchair, massaging his temples. Alina rummaged for ice packs, her own shoulder sporting what looked like a developing bruise from the backstage brawl. Julius set down his gear, feeling the weight of exhaustion crush him. But it was Zavra who, after the initial wave of relief, began pacing restlessly by the panoramic window. "Now that my people know I've openly defied Cassian," she murmured, "it's only a matter of time before the monarchy is forced to respond publicly. Cassian might still try to salvage the alliance by sending more agents, or he may pivot to another strategy, like discrediting me." She paused, pressing a hand to the glass. "I can't just hide here forever. Earth is in the crosshairs as long as I remain." Julius rose and joined her, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. "You're not a burden," he said quietly. "We took a stand today and we showed that Cassian's intimidation won't work. If the monarchy sees you standing up for what's right, maybe they'll rethink the alliance. You might even inspire them to reject Cassian outright." Zavra's silver eyes flicked to him. "But that requires me to remain visible," she said, voice tight. "Once the authorities and the public know who I am, I lose any chance at anonymity. If the monarchy chooses to side with Cassian, Earth's revelation to the galaxy could spark conflict." She swallowed. "And if I stay silent, Cassian might continue his covert attacks." Alina, returning with a bag of frozen peas for Finn's bruise, chimed in. "We can't possibly keep you hidden now that half the city saw an alien sabotage an underground facility. The cat's out of the bag. All we can do is manage how the narrative unfolds." Elias nodded, tugging at the collar of his shirt. "We could put you in touch with media outlets that want the truth. You do an interview, state your position. Or you talk to Earth's government about asylum." Zavra's eyes flickered with a spark of hope. "Asylum," she repeated softly. "That's a concept we do have on Vishari Prime, though rarely used. If Earth grants me asylum, Cassian's claim has no legitimacy here." Julius rubbed his chin, thinking about the tangled web of interplanetary politics. "The question is whether Earth's governments will risk acknowledging an alien monarchy. But given the circumstances, it might be their best move to protect themselves." Finn, wincing as he pressed the peas to his ribs, grinned painfully. "Can you imagine the press conference?" He tried to make light. "Princess from another planet arrives. Requests Earth's legal protection from cosmic tyrant. That's got to be primetime TV." Alina's lips twitched. "Not exactly sure how many Earth lawyers specialize in alien royal marriage disputes, but we'll figure it out." Silence settled as the idea sank in. Zavra took a deep breath, turning back to gaze at the city lights below. "Then let's do it," she whispered. "I will not return to Vishari Prime in chains, and I will not allow Cassian to threaten Earth. If asylum is the step that secures freedom for me, and possibly for my people, then I'll take it." Julius slipped an arm around her shoulders, offering quiet support. Outside, sirens still wailed, and helicopters buzzed overhead. The world was changing faster than any of them could fully grasp, but in that moment they found a sense of resolve, ready to face whatever came next. 1 month later, the swirl of events had settled into a tense yet hopeful rhythm. Zavra's public reveal triggered a firestorm of global media coverage. Footage of her emerald skin, glowing braids, and the confrontation at the convention center spread across every platform. Governments convened emergency sessions to discuss the ramifications. Skeptics claimed it was an elaborate hoax. Conspiracy theorists spun wild tales, and scientists clamored for interviews. Through it all, Zavra, Julius, Alina, Elias, and Finn navigated a landscape none of them had imagined. By now, Zavra had been granted provisional asylum by several Earth nations, pending a more formal resolution of her legal status. While the monarchy on Vishari Prime issued contradictory statements, some claiming she was abducted by Earth, others labeling her a renegade traitor, Cassian's empire grew cautious. The fiasco with the Disruptor, broadcast worldwide, stained his reputation. Interstellar politics, it turned out, relied heavily on alliances built on prestige. Seeing Cassian bested by primitives eroded the mystique he had so carefully cultivated. In the midst of these upheavals, Julius found himself sharing a small apartment with Zavra. They chose a modest but secure building in a district that hosted newly arrived alien researchers, other species who had quietly begun visiting Earth once the veil of secrecy was lifted. Their living space included reinforced locks, a hidden panic room, installed by a paranoid landlord after the revelations, and absolutely top-notch internet speed, courtesy of Elias's hacking wizardry. Domestic life with an alien princess was anything but ordinary. Zavra's advanced physiology meant she ran slightly hotter than a human, so they often battled over the thermostat. She had a tendency to unintentionally break cheap utensils or furniture whenever she was startled, leading to multiple frantic online orders for replacements. Still, laughter filled their moments of respite, and Julius discovered a warmth in her presence that transcended the differences in their species. "How did your interview go?" Julius asked one evening, returning from a short grocery run. Zavra lounged on the couch, hair undone from its usual braids, scrolling through Earth news articles on a borrowed tablet. She offered a tired smile. "Long," she said, "but beneficial." The ambassadors from a coalition of Earth nations seemed genuinely interested in forging peaceful contacts with Vashari Prime, once my father recovers. They even want me to speak at a summit. Julius parked himself beside her, unloading groceries while she perused the feed. "That's huge," he said softly. "I know it's probably nerve-wracking, but it's progress, right?" Zavra nodded, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Yes, I never wanted to be some exiled princess, but if my status can open doors for peaceful exchange, then maybe this was all worth it." A chime from the kitchen broke the moment, a shrill beep. "That's the timer on the pizza," Julius said, grinning. "Turns out living with you has triggered a lifelong craving for pizza. We must have ordered or baked it 100 times this month alone." Zavra's lips curved in a teasing smirk. "Your Earth staples remain my favorite novelty. Besides, it beats the forced banquets Cassian's wives presumably endure." She sobered at that mention, setting down the tablet. "I received a message from one of them today. Apparently, some of his wives have found ways to connect with each other, bolstered by news of my freedom. There's quiet talk of rebellion in Cassian's territory." Julius inhaled sharply, scanning her face. "That's a big deal." "Yes," she said. "It means that even if I'm far from Vashari Prime, my defiance could inspire others. Cassian may find himself dealing with more unrest than he ever anticipated." Her voice was steady, but tinged with empathy for those still trapped. "I'll keep supporting them however I can. Earth's technology is surprisingly adept at spreading information, even across interstellar links." Their gaze locked, and Julius found his heart full of admiration. "Let's do it," he said, voice earnest. "However we can help, we will." Zavra's smile answered him in silent gratitude, and as the timer beeped again, dinner momentarily overshadowed by thoughts of cosmic revolution, they embraced the uncertain future together. From my point of view, the story of Julius and Zavra is a testament to how courage, friendship, and a touch of humor can ignite real change, even when confronted by seemingly unstoppable forces. Their unlikely partnership showed us that empathy can bridge cultural chasms and that genuine determination can overcome advanced weaponry or political schemes. Above all, this journey reminds us that standing up for one another, regardless of background or origin, can reshape entire worlds. I hope you found inspiration in their adventure. What are your thoughts on Zavra's bold stand or Julius's inventive coding skills? Have any theories on what happens next with Vashari Prime and Earth's budding alliance? Share your comments below. We'd love to hear your ideas and keep the discussion alive. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more tales that combine the extraordinary with the everyday.